I'd like to call the special meeting to order of the Joliet City Council on October 26, 2016. This meeting is presided over by Mayor Robert Odekirk. And would you call the roll, Krista?
Mayor Odekirk?
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Here.
Councilman Girl?
Here.
Councilman Hug? Absent. Councilman McFarland? Absent. Councilman Morris?
Here.
Councilman Mudron? Absent. Councilwoman Quillman?
Here.
Councilman Turk?
Here.
First, are there any citizens to be heard on any agenda items for the evening? Seeing none?
Krista?
Yep.
I was just going to say, Krista, before we get started, I would like to mention we do have some county elected officials that are here as well. We know we have a great relationship with the county and their partnership, and they've invested in our city. We want to thank them for that. But I just want to recognize the county elected officials that are here. Don Moran is here from the county board. Annette Parker is also here from the county board. Reagan Freitag is here from the county board, also chair of the Capital Committee. Mike Frizzalone, chairman of finance, is also here, and Denise Winfrey is here with us as well. We want to thank all the elected officials for coming today. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Next is a presentation on the downtown plan by Camiros Consulting Group.
Great, thank you very much. Happy to be here. I'd like to just start by saying what a interesting project this was and how fortunate we feel to have been selected for this. This is a very interesting assignment for a number of reasons. First of all, downtown Joliet is an interesting place. It's unique. It's not like any other place in the region. You know, it has this great kind of dichotomy of potentials, great potentials, and longstanding challenges that kind of, you know, are opposite each other and you have to resolve. It has an interesting stakeholder organization. We actually had two clients, CCP and the City of Joliet. That doesn't happen all the time. And this is a place with involved elected officials. One of the few assignments where we met with elected officials a couple of times during the process. We had some one-on-one conversations with elected officials as we were doing the plan, got input at a high level, and that doesn't happen all the time. And lastly, I think this is an interesting assignment because downtown Joliet, I believe, is poised for success. If you follow through on this plan, if you start to implement the action agenda, I think you will achieve success. And nothing motivates really a planner more than doing a plan for a place that can be successful. So with that, I will start the presentation, I hope.
Aim it that way.
Begin.
Aim it this way. There we go. Wrong button. Okay. So I always like to start by telling the audience what I will be talking about. And these 7 items are what the presentation will be about: overview of the plan, reason for optimism, a focus on fundamentals, laying out the downtown improvement strategy, looking at key initiatives, key projects. Really the heart of the plan is the action agenda. And just as I gave a presentation to CCP about the plan, giving a presentation to the city about the plan, the last slide is specific to the city, implications for the city of Joliet. So this plan is strategically oriented. It is a plan that focuses on getting things done. We wouldn't call this a vision plan. It's not throwing out a bunch of lofty ideas or projects that, you know, might be interesting and capture imagination but really have no chance of happening. This is more instead of a wouldn't it be nice plan, a let's make it happen plan. So the goals of the project were to achieve stakeholder consensus regarding downtown needs and initiatives. I think that's very important. We need to all agree on what we need to do. To frame the downtown real estate market, to define best development opportunities. I think the key need for the downtown is to attract private sector investment, and we need to really be in tune with the market to do that. We wanted to define a viable downtown improvement strategy. We think we have one. We want to talk about the reorganization of stakeholder responsibilities to more effectively pursue the opportunities that you have for improvement. If you're not organized for success, you're not going to achieve success. We wanted to identify potential redevelopment projects as a follow-up to the market work and stakeholder responsibilities. Other thing we thought was very important was to define short-term public improvements that were needed to make the downtown successful. There are some investments that the city would have to make, and we wanted to lay these out. We wanted to obtain some city commitments for key initiatives. We tried to do that through working with our key stakeholders and through discussions with elected officials. And obviously today, if you approve the plan, I think that would be an implication for also making commitments to the action agenda. And then lastly, to identify ways to improve downtown operations and functionality. The downtown is not as user-friendly as it could be. It's a bit antiquated in certain places, and we wanted to illustrate how this part can be improved. So that was, I think, the goals for the downtown plan. The genesis of the project, I think, is important just to review. The new plan was needed to help set an agenda for the CCP. The CCP was, at that time, just had a new executive director. There was a need to kind of set the agenda. Kind of come full circle on that. The second point of genesis in the project was to create a comprehensive plan for the downtown to link some of these proposed projects that were happening, things that were on the horizon, how to link them together, how to leverage them to achieve the most improvement that we can. We wanted to address the role of Chicago Street. If there's a focal point for the downtown, what should it be? Should it be Chicago Street? And if so, what is the nature of this focal point? And lastly, we needed a plan to help fill the vacancies, really the spaces between the anchors that you have. So downtown Joliet is amazing in that it has these great anchors already in place. You know, you have the Rialto Theater, you have Harris Casino, you have Silver Cross Field. These are great attractions for people, but the rest of the downtown kind of is lacking. These are the spaces between the anchors, and so how do we fill those spaces? So that was really the genesis of the project. And reasons for optimism, I think, are manyfold, and we want to start with, let me see here. Kendall, how does the laser pointer work?
There's no laser.
There's no laser pointer. Okay, okay. So we won't get bogged down by that, but you know, we're not starting from scratch here in downtown Joliet. There's a lot of positive things happening, and we made this map that you see here, completed and announced what we call catalyst projects, things that really help to drive interest in the downtown. The crosshatch areas are the areas that kind of need some attention, need some reinvestment, whether it be private sector investment or city investment. And then we also see these catalyst projects that are happening in relation to these areas of need, okay? So, you know, Joliet Junior College was a great catalyst project. As I mentioned, Silver Cross Field is off the map, but it's also a great project. The Transportation Center is a magnificent investment in transportation and will make Joliet one of the few places that has all these different modes of transportation going for it, and I think it will help drive investment and interest in the downtown. The future new Will County Courthouse was also something that was on the table at the start of the project and would be a great addition. So you have these things happening, and in addition to that, we identified additional key projects and initiatives to consider and hopefully get commitment on, and we'll talk about those as we go through the project. But we're not starting from scratch. There's a lot of reason for optimism. We really emphasized the fundamentals. You really need to know that you're going in the right direction in order to be committed to that direction. And so we really focused on this inside-out process where we started with why downtown Joliet, why should downtown Joliet be successful, why should people go to downtown Joliet, live in downtown Joliet, come to shop in downtown Joliet. And I think the answer really is that downtown Joliet can be this dynamic urban center, kind of a satellite city. You know, you have a lot of suburbs with little kind of crossroad developments, maybe quaint little places where you can have a cup of coffee or maybe get a meal or something like that. And we're talking about something much different than that. We're talking about a dynamic urban center something that is big. It's not small. It has a lot of different uses. It's multifaceted. It is pulsing. It may be gritty at times. It may be unpredictable at times. It's always exciting. And so this image that we see here on the screen is kind of what we think a dynamic urban center would look like. And I think Joliet, can become this kind of thing. And it's something that people want. It's something that people really value and would make downtown Joliet functionally important, not only to the community, but the southwest suburban region. And I think this is a very valid kind of functional role for downtown Joliet to fulfill. So this improvement strategy, I think, is also a key element of the plan. How do we turn the corner? We have some great things happening. We really have a lack of private sector investment in the downtown in terms of the individual parcels of property in the downtown. What is a strategy that can help leverage that private sector investment? And so we believe this strategy of make Joliet a mecca for young adults is the kind of strategy that can work. It is not anything that I personally, I don't favor young adults. If it turned out that to make downtown a mecca for empty nesters, I'd be excited about that too. But I think the conditions that you have in downtown Joliet really lend themselves first and foremost to attracting young people to the downtown. And why is this? Why is this strategy valid? Well, the downtown's #1 strength is its entertainment and cultural component, including bars and restaurants. And these things appeal, frankly, more to younger people than to older people. Downtown Joliet has 2 colleges and universities that operate in the downtown. Obviously, that brings young people into the downtown already. Housing for students and recent graduates is a potential source of demand. You're really hungry for key private sector projects to happen in downtown, and this is something that could happen, frankly, fairly short term. The downtown stock of older, inexpensive buildings, we think, could be adaptively used for units for young adults and have the flexibility in terms of pricing that would appeal to younger adults who don't have a lot of money. And the level of finish in these residential units could be adjusted to meet this price point. An emphasis on rental housing, we think, aligns with market conditions. Downtown Joliet, at this point in time, is not ready for ownership housing. I don't think you're going to have any success with condominiums for empty nesters at this point or young professionals at this point. I think you need to make the area fertile for other kinds of investment like ownership housing later down the road. It might be 10, it might be 20 years down the road. If you pursue this strategy of making downtown a mecca for young adults, I think other potential investments will be possible later on, okay? Young adults are less likely to rule out living in the downtown due to image perception problems, and we all know what that is. So I think young adults can cope with that better, frankly, than older people. And I think with a growing residential base, more retail uses will be attracted to the downtown, including eating and drinking uses. So I think these things help reinforce each other. If we can make downtown a mecca for young adults, create a thriving residential population, starting with young adults, I think these other things will follow and help make downtown fertile for other kinds of investments. So the key initiatives that we're identifying with the plan, some of them have already happened, some things are in the works, some things are proposed in the plan, but we have these 13 items here. Joliet Junior College obviously has been built. I believe there's some finishing that's needed there to make it fully operational. University of St. Francis built their facility. It's a great success. The future Will County Courthouse. Kudos to who's ever responsible for getting a tentative agreement on that, and hopefully that will become formalized, and that will be a key project that is set. We heard about, and we really believe that a plaza green space, the plaza green space for the transportation center is really part of that whole improvement. It's a longer term thing, but if it can happen, I think that will be positive. You have the bus transit center which is also part of the transportation project. And that will be a great part of this multimodal transportation center. We have a number of what we've identified as kind of short-term private sector projects. 11 Cass Street, which is the Plaza Motel. It was proposed for redevelopment when we were doing the project, and that proposal fell through. But it is something that's potentially viable. We think that would be a great project to push. The Rialto complex, the office rehab, I think, is also a key project to make that whole facility viable and to help the finances of the Rialto as a whole. The downtown square park, which is item number 10, was proposed before. We think it's a great and needed improvement for the downtown. That's a key initiative. You know, I kind of got mixed up on 11 Cass Street versus the Plaza Hotel, but they're both private sector projects that are needed. Chicago Street connection is essential to really create a new dynamic for the downtown, create a new circulation pattern, and provide visible evidence that the downtown is changing. Lastly, the Union Station adaptive reuse is something that would be part of the transportation center. Great project, and so that would round out kind of the key initiatives that are either completed, announced, or proposed as part of our plan. Other key initiatives, there's the short-term residential development opportunities map. So there are a number of buildings right now in downtown that are really very suitable for adaptive reuse to residential. And we think that, you know, somewhere in the range of 1,000 units could be brought online within a short period of time to really make this Mecca for residential, Mecca for young adults strategy work. There are the buildings available to make it work. We have on the other side of the screen the public improvement program. So there are a number of public improvements that really are strategic in nature and are needed and need to be funded by the city. Obviously, the Chicago Street connection you all know about. I think that's really number one on the list. It's identified as number 2 on the map. Number 1 on the map is to turn Chicago Street, redesign Chicago Street to become a multimodal corridor. Okay, a corridor that has cars, that has bicycle transportation, that has public transit in the form of bus, and pedestrian traffic. And this is really what the future of successful urban centers is today, this multimodal transportation characteristic. And so Chicago Street as your focal point should be redesigned and made into a very current modern urban place. The downtown square that we talked about is item number 3, the transportation center is 4, and the Will County Courthouse is 5. 6 is a proposal in the plan for a bikeway that would link the downtown to the regional bikeway network. It would go up the west side of the river, and then also you have this east-west link along the railroad tracks, which would connect to the transportation center and further out to other regional trails. So I think a key part of the plan in terms of transportation is making it a bike-friendly place, making it a multimodal place, which aligns with the investment you're making in the transportation center. And here we have a graphic of one option for the Chicago Street redesign so that you have 2 lanes of parking on either side of the paved surface, 2 lanes of through traffic, and generous areas for pedestrians, cafe seating, and potentially separated bike traffic within the Chicago Street right-of-way. We also have a long-term improvement program. You know, it's really not the focus of the plan, but there are some additional big ideas that we have. I think I'm just going to pick out a couple of these. So the current parking lot for the Will County Courthouse, when that new courthouse gets moved over and separate parking is provided, this is going to be a key redevelopment site, and you need to preserve that site for a new anchor, whatever that may be. It could be a number of things. It could be a key mixed-use building that would be 20 stories in height and have, you know, retail and office and residential. It could be,
Center, I think.
another university that wants to move into downtown Joliet. It could be a corporate headquarters. It could be a number of things, but it needs to be something that is very prominent and really makes great use of that key one-block area, okay? So I'll pick that out. Another idea that we have is to create a downtown park along the river, kind of where the boat inlet is, okay? And we understand that there are businesses that use that property now. I think this is a longer-term proposal, but that water inlet could become a protected kind of water recreation area where people can launch boats and paddle around and provide another amenity to a growing residential base in the downtown. So we have these longer-term proposals. These would be initiatives 16 through 27 on the right-hand part of that screen. So we have looked for the long term beyond 5 years. We've really focused on 5 years because we think downtown Joliet needs to get started in the right direction. If you never get started, you're never going to get in the right, you're never going to have success. So we talked about the action agenda. In the plan, we detail 9 critical initiatives, and we kind of detail them in some, to some length. And we have 2 examples here of initiatives. Initiative 2 is to reorganize stakeholder responsibilities. So that's the initiative. The benefits and the outcome are to the right of that, and there are 6 specific benefits and outcome that would come from reorganizing stakeholder responsibilities. We have specific actions that are needed to carry that out. We identify who carries those actions out and the timing of those, okay? So this is really a roadmap for the city and for CCP to implement the plan. We think all of these 9 initiatives could be carried out, completed within a 5-year process. If you do that, I think success will come to downtown Joliet. I'm not going to go over all of these 9 in detail because it would take too much time. But what I'd like to do is to focus on what I'm calling action agenda priorities. So there are different ways you can slice these 9 items on the action agenda. You could organize them in terms of the dollar cost, what would cost from lowest to highest. You can organize them in terms of ease of implementation, which are the easiest to achieve, which will take more time, more effort. What I've done here is to organize these things in terms of how I think they will benefit the downtown. Which of these initiatives will benefit the downtown the most? I think they're all essential, but I think it will be instructive to kind of look at what at least Camiros thinks will benefit the downtown the most. I think number 1 on the list is to reorganize stakeholder responsibilities. I believe right now the city and CCP, the 2 main stakeholders, are not well organized for achieving success in the downtown. I think there are not well-defined roles for the 2 organizations right now. There's not kind of this seamless partnership that's needed between the 2 organizations, and I think that has to be addressed. And I will talk about that more a little bit later. So, number 2 on the list of priorities would be to reconnect Chicago Street. This happens to be, I think, a fairly easy initiative now that you've got agreement with Will County on the courthouse, okay? I think this would be a huge boost to the downtown, and that would be number 2. Number 3 is to stimulate residential development projects. So I think reconnecting Chicago Street will help with that. It'll also help with the retail, but we need to get this residential development momentum in place and get it going, and that really is something that ties in with the stakeholder responsibilities. We need somebody, I think, at CCP who can help do this. Number 4 is to improve the homeless and vagrancy problem. We all know downtown has an image problem. That image problem is kind of exacerbated by homelessness and vagrancy that people see out there, especially when you have a lack of activity. The vagrants and the homeless really stand out, and sometimes that can contribute to this perception of crime in the downtown. And I think that needs to be addressed. We have a method for addressing that in the action agenda, and we can talk about that later if you'd like. Number 5 is to renovate Chicago Street as a multimodal corridor. The downtown needs to become current. It needs to be a place of the future, not a place of the past. And making Chicago Street a multimodal corridor, tying it into the transportation center, providing bike access to the region, these things will all help make the downtown current and make it a place that people want to be in. Build a downtown square and park. It's essential that the downtown have a really iconic public space to gather, to hold events in, to kind of augment the special events that are quite frankly very successful in the downtown. You really need a place to leverage that kind of special event activity. Number 7 on the list is to complete negotiations on the county courthouse. Now, this happened to be, in terms of timing, right at the top of the list because the county was going to go someplace else. I mean, they were going to build new facilities somewhere. And so the city had to respond. It did respond. It responded successfully. But in terms of how much benefit this will provide to the downtown, I put it here as number 7 because, frankly, you already have great anchors in the downtown already. You already have, frankly, the county facilities that are here. Yes, these will be bigger and better. But if having county facilities in the downtown were going to make downtown successful, it would have done it already. So I think we need to now shift our focus from providing these anchors, hitting the home run. You're not going to solve the downtown's problems now by hitting home runs. We have to fill in the spaces around the anchors. And so this is important. It's essential. I'm very thrilled that you have a tentative agreement on this, but I would place this at number 7. Number 8 is to extend the life of the downtown TIF district. Yes, I think this is essential. It's going to provide public financing funds that will be needed to stimulate private sector investment. It's necessary, but I would put it at number 8. And number 9 is to upgrade street parking and operations and management, making the downtown more user-friendly in this vein, to have smart parkings, where people can load the meter with their iPhone, make the downtown current, make it more user-friendly. And this is important, but I put this at number 9. So we've just kind of gone over the action agenda in terms of priorities, what you should do first, or what would benefit the downtown most, and this is kind of where I see it shaking out. And the last item of my presentation are implications for the city. So this is kind of my message to the city as one of the key partners in this process, how to move forward with the downtown plan, how to use the downtown plan, and how to make your downtown successful. So number 1 is the city and CCP must form a seamless partnership, okay? There really can't be any rivalry. There can't be any turf issues between the two organizations. You're both there to accomplish the same thing. I mean, CCCP's whole reason for existence is to make the downtown a successful place. I mean, the city has many other reasons for being, but it happens to have a responsibility and a role to play in making the downtown successful. So in this seamless partnership, I recommend that CCP be looked at as kind of the active partner, the arms and the legs, actually going out there and doing the things that need to be done, to have the staff people to focus on the downtown and do the things that need to be done to make it successful. So in a certain kind of analogy, the CCP would be the machine, it would be the car, okay? And the city is really the fuel that gets put into the car that makes it run, okay? So the city is the taxing authority. The city is the regulatory authority. The city has the power over the TIF. The city has the power over the streets. And so the city is really in the position of providing the energy that would make CCP and other stakeholders go to help really drive the improvement process. So this is kind of the seamless partnership that I see, and I think both organizations need to ramp up to fulfill their role in this partnership. We can certainly talk about that in more detail as well. I think the partnership must be based on equality, that you're both equal partners in this, okay? and no one dictates to the other how things should be done. And frankly, you need to have this mindset of, okay, we agree on this. You both see, we've talked, we may have some issues on certain things, but we've talked through them. We're in agreement. We're moving forward jointly as one. Now, having said that, I think the city is first among equals and frankly bears more responsibility. You're the corporate authority. You have all this power. CCP is a specialty organization that's really put in place to help drive the downtown, make it successful. But I think you have more authority, you have more power, and a little bit more of the responsibility, I think, comes to the city. Stakeholder reorganization is the #1 priority in my book for how to make the downtown successful. If you're not organized for success, you're not going to achieve success. So forming the seamless partnership is key, and I think the SSA renewal is kind of the strategic point of coordination for reorganizing stakeholder responsibility. So this SSA that helps fund CCP comes up for renewal in 2016. And this is the perfect time to kind of reorganize stakeholder responsibilities. It's the perfect time to look at the funding for CCP and the SSA. It's the perfect time to look at staffing for their organization and how that staffing relates to city roles and responsibilities. I think there's an opportunity. Frankly, there's a leverage that the city has in this process, and you guys should be really talking now, if not before now, about how to structure the renewal of the SSA and, in a larger context, reorganizing roles and responsibilities for achieving downtown success. I want to talk about an idea that I heard for a joint city CCP executive position. And when I first heard the idea of someone that would be paid part by CCP, part by the city, would have a dual function, I kind of was negative on it. I thought, well, CCP has this exclusive mission to improve the downtown, and mixing it with the city responsibility would be a bad idea. But then I thought, right at the top of the list is this seamless partnership that's needed. And what better way to put into place a seamless partnership than to have an executive that had responsibility to both organizations. I think it could be anything that brings more funding to CCP. Frankly, if city pays half of that person's salary, that might allow CCP to hire a separate special events coordinator, which would allow this executive person to function on economic development. I think if it's done right, it could be a great thing for forming this seamless partnership. I think economic development is the #1 challenge. You need to bring in private sector investment into the downtown. You have a couple of investors who have said that they are interested in making further investments in the downtown, but frankly, you need to bring in new people. You need to bring in new investors, people who know residential development and how to use this older building stock to create new dwelling units that young people will like. That's your #1 challenge, and that has to be addressed in the reorganization of stakeholder responsibilities. Who's going to do that? And, I believe up until this point, there's kind of been an inertia regarding the downtown that is kind of structural. I mean, who's responsible for the downtown? Who has the responsibility for the downtown? Yeah, CCP has a lot of responsibility, but frankly, they don't have enough resources, staff-wise, money-wise, and authority-wise, to be the driving force for downtown success. I think you need to get over this inertia. I think successful initiatives in the public realm come from the elected officials. I think you guys are going to have to make it a priority of yours for the downtown to be successful, to make sure all of these things happen, okay? And should there be, I don't know if you have a downtown subcommittee now or not, but maybe that would be a good idea for those of you who are most interested in the downtown to form a subcommittee to monitor what's going on, to be involved in these key initiatives, starting with stakeholder reorganization. I think that would be an important thing to consider. And fight this inertia that's really plagued the downtown for a long time. So I believe that is my final point. I think that gives you a really good overview of the downtown plan. There's a lot in this relatively small document. I think it's packed with content, and I think that helps make it easy to read and easy to digest, but still gives it kind of the punch in terms of what really needs to happen. And I think it's a good plan. If there is anything, I can make one pitch here. We don't usually do this. If there's one particular role to play for Camillus going forward, I think we can help in this reorganization of stakeholder responsibilities. There may be the need for an intermediary between CCP and the city to kind of lay this out, how it should be, what should be the roles of the various entities, what staff would be needed to carry out those roles, and how the funding should take place. So that is my final thought regarding the plan and the presentation tonight, and I'd be happy to answer questions that you have, questions from the audience.
Questions, comments?
I have a question, Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I know when you brought it in, when you were brought on to do your consulting, we were in transition, and we're finishing up a transition. We didn't really have an economic development committee to speak of. Of course, now we do. And we're also moving in a direction, and I need to know how that would reflect. It's kind of throwing you a curveball in the ninth inning. We're going to be bringing our own economic development director on full-time with the staff. So that's going to have to change the perspective of the consulting report, because there will be a dedicated individual at the city who will be focused on the downtown and the rest of the city.
Okay, well, I mean, I wasn't aware that, there had been talk of an economic development coordinator for the city for some time. Then I heard about this idea for a kind of dual executive between CCP and the city. Well, first of all, I would say anything that the city does to advance economic development with respect to the downtown is great. I do think you need, kind of the right kind of person, and the downtown is, I think, a harder nut to crack, frankly, than some of the other economic development opportunities that you're going to have in the city overall. I mean, it may be easier to achieve development along the interstate, for example, than to have investment in the downtown. So I think you really need to be kind of very disciplined with this new economic development staff person, that they have the background and the mission to drive the kinds of economic development and reinvestment in the downtown that are needed. And I think it's oftentimes it's difficult to get that kind of the kind of skills for older buildings. How do you reuse older buildings? How do you get investment in older buildings versus how do you drive investment in greenfield sites on the perimeter? So those are kind of two different mindsets, and it would be, I think, important for the city to kind of get the right person and provide the direction to achieve both goals.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your fine report, actually. Appreciate you coming out tonight. I guess I want to touch on just one thing that you had mentioned. You had mentioned a lot of the positives that we already have here,
Right.
In the downtown city of Joliet, which a lot of other municipalities don't have, or a lot of other downtowns don't have. The government services that we provide, the University of St. or the government services that are located in downtown Joliet. The University of St. Francis Junior College made a huge investment in our city. The multimodal, the Rialto Square Theater. I want to kind of focus in on, you also said, having some additional housing, particularly for either student or young people,
Right.
To relocate to the city of Joliet. The city of Joliet and the county just kind of showed that what can happen when you start to partner with, with various governmental bodies or agencies, with respect to the courthouse. And I think you're onto something here with respect to having young people live in the city of Joliet. Have we reached out to Joliet Junior College or the University of St. Francis to see if there are some partnership opportunities with respect to housing there?
We have talked with University of St. Francis representatives about this, and I would say, there's a positive response to the idea. I think the University of St. Francis is very proud of its investment in the downtown. It's very proud of the success that that investment has had within the university, the response that it's received from both staff and faculty about, gee, this is a great building. I like coming down here. It'd be great if, there were more such investments. I think with respect to housing for University of St. Francis students, kind of the message that we got was, well, the university is not going to develop housing for students. We would help advance that idea by referring our students who want to live in the downtown to a properly designed and managed, residential building. And so I think we could look for University of St. Francis to support the idea, especially if it were located in the area close to where the building is. But they're not going to invest capital dollars to do it. They're not going to take it on as a project.
But they would certainly be agreeable to work with
Yes.
possibly a private developer to say, hey, we think there's a market here and a source of, a source of information.
Right.
From
And a source of referral,
And referral,
and really
right.
sanctioning, if the university were to say, the developers of this building talked to us, asked us our opinion if this would be a suitable place for our students to live who want to live in the downtown, and we think it would be. I think that would go a long way toward getting the students who want to live in the downtown into such a building to kind of promote the idea.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much. Great report. I want to kind of go back and touch a little bit about the city and the CCP role in working together, a collaborative piece, a seamless piece, I think that you called it in there. And I think that this could be a very beneficial piece. I understood my colleagues' concern about the economic development or economic development person. But I see downtown Joliet as a little bit different animal, to work and do that with. So I certainly see an opportunity, or what do you suggest that opportunity? Can we kind of talk about that relationship a little bit more, kind of open that up?
Well, given the city's organization, kind of when we were doing the study, and the CCP's organization, and talking to both clients about this, it seemed to me that the best division of responsibility would be for CCP to have the primary responsibility for making things happen, okay? They should, first of all, have contact with and relationship with all of the property owners out there, know who's looking to reinvest in their property, looking to sell their property, maybe even knowing what kind of price would be needed to procure certain property, maybe taking on the role of stockpiling property for future redevelopment when properties become available, rather than only when somebody's looking. I mean, when somebody comes to downtown looking for property, if it's not readily available, they look someplace else. But if an organization is there that can kind of stockpile property and operate it and put it, make it available when investors want to invest in the downtown, I think that would be a useful role. And I think CCP as a 501c3 could do that. So I think CCP can do a lot more than it has been doing. I think right now it's kind of been burdened as this special events coordinator, and that's been a great thing for the downtown. I don't think you should give that up, but it needs to do more than that. And so I think that's why I think the CCP would play the best role for being not the sole driver of downtown improvement, but really the active participant, the active partner who's out there, looking to make things happen and working with the city to use the city tools, the city incentives, be it TIF, be it other kinds of financial incentives, advising the city on certain aspects of regulation, whether it be parking or the structure of parking for the parking structures, or policing, or other kinds of things. Really, the CCP is there. They're on site all the time. They're constantly involved with the businesses and the property owners. And so I think if CCP can be that kind of, the machine, the active partner, and the city can be the fuel that helps drive the machine, I kind of think that that's what I envision as a good seamless partnership.
And just one follow-up piece, and knowing that if this role is developed better by the CCP being a 501c3, could open the city up to a larger collaboration in there with possibly some funding that will go on that the CCP can bring to the
Right.
table.
Yeah, I mean, as a 501c3, they are better positioned to get, grant funding and other kinds of things that maybe they haven't really looked for to date. They can do things as a private entity that the city really can't, in terms of buying property or stockpiling it or facilitating certain private sector investment actions. So I think it's great to have really a private nonprofit entity like CCP combined with the city corporate authority to form this seamless partnership.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Just one question. One of the, I don't know, you mentioned parking, and I don't know how far your study went into parking, but, one of the major complaints is, someone comes down, we have metered parking on the streets, they come downtown and they get tied up in an attorney's office or in a bank, or they're having lunch, and they have to run out and feed the meter or else get a ticket. And that's, one of the arguments is, hey, you're trying to bring people to downtown Joliet, but you're not making parking easy.
That happened to me, as a matter of fact.
So, I mean, did you have a recommendation?
Yes.
I know a lot of communities are taking metered parking off the street and doing some other thing other enforcement to stop people from parking there all day long.
Yes.
Employees, whatever. But is that one of your recommendations?
Yes, it is. I think this whole idea of smart parking, where you can put different rates on different portions of the downtown streets. There may be certain blocks where you need to have turnover. It's very active. You want turnover to happen. You price those parking spaces high. There may be places, you need places for overnight parking, long-term parking, if you're going to have a residential base. I mean, people can't go out there and feed the meter if they're, if they're residents of the downtown. And maybe, I don't think you should require that all of the people who live in downtown have an off-street parking space. So I think the notion of smart parking is, would be a great benefit to the downtown. And there may be certain times where you don't charge for parking at all, and that can vary depending on the day of the week, the time of day, and, what's going on in the downtown.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, you had mentioned the homeless problem, and you said you had some ideas
Yes.
to address that. Were you ready to share them tonight?
Yes.
Or? Oh, okay.
Yes. So, it's a difficult problem. We've heard, during the course of our work, various ideas to help reduce the problem on the downtown. And frankly, there's not an easy solution. We think that the city should hire a specialist in homelessness and homeless shelters to look at number one, the number one recommendation is to adopt an amendment to your zoning ordinance to make public private nonprofit uses that provide public benefits or homeless shelters, those should become special uses in the downtown area so that people cannot, as of right, establish new homeless shelters or facilities that help the homeless. Because you have to get a handle on this, you have to regulate this to stop it from impacting the downtown. I don't think anybody, Joliet has a reputation for a welcoming community, a community that is concerned, that has a heart. I don't think you want to change that, but by the same token, you can't let it undermine your whole downtown. So you need to adopt a text amendment to stop further of these kinds of uses from being established. Next, you hire an expert on this particular topic to come in and study the situation, look at the homeless service providers that you have, how they operate, how you could perhaps regulate them better, how you could, in the absence of effective regulation, get them to agree to certain changes in their operations that would result in a reduction in the impacts on the downtown. And then, obviously, you have to put those recommendations into place. But it is a technical issue that, frankly, we don't have the background in to do, but there are people who do have that background who can help show you how to reduce the impact of your current homeless service providers in or near the downtown.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes.
Your number one priority kind of leads into number two. First of all, reorganizing the stakeholders and their responsibilities, and of course, the reconnection of Chicago Street. What would you suggest that the stakeholders, what we aren't doing now, how would you go about reorganizing that?
Okay. So,
Because,
Let's-
excuse me, let me just finish. Because I see the key here to do anything is opening Chicago Street right away.
well, I think that your reopening Chicago Street is a great win for the city, for the downtown. And, it may have some effect on stakeholder responsibilities, but I see the stakeholder reorganization as kind of, I see it as separate from Chicago Street reconnection. So some of the things that I suggested in terms of this reorganization would be on the CCP end, hire somebody separate for the special events coordinator, okay? And have then your executive director free to engage in economic development, free to recruit developers into the downtown, help start this residential development momentum that we need in the downtown. Someone who can go out and look at properties and say, hey, there's an opportunity for a redevelopment of this or adaptive reuse of this or investment in this property because the owner is motivated now. It's a great building for this kind of use. Someone who knows that kind of thing. The CCP needs that kind of expertise on their staff right now. So
That's an economic development director you're talking about.
I think CCP needs that expertise on their staff. If the city has it or if it can be coordinated with the city, that would be great. I think it needs to be somebody who's very close to the downtown, someone who knows the property owners. And if this new person this is going to hire is going to do that, that would be great. I initially thought it would be kind of better if that person were housed in CCP, because CCP has a sole focus on the downtown. If you can make it work, in a different way, that's fine. But that expertise needs to be brought to bear in the downtown. That kind of recruitment of development and investment has to happen in the downtown, and that's really the number one thing that is needed in terms of stakeholder reorganization.
Okay. Well, I say Chicago Street's also part of that because also some of the stakeholders, we have to come to an agreement to open that up.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that, I think the tentative agreement on the Will County Courthouse, I mean, we were told by certain Will County representatives that Chicago Street wouldn't be reopened until the whole matter. There was an agreement on the whole enchilada, if you will, on the new courthouse and anything else that kind of is related to the county's investment in new facilities in the downtown. So with that tentative agreement in place, and if that can be formalized, then I think Will County would cooperate on the Chicago Street reopening, and that's what we need.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation tonight. I appreciate you coming forward. I think I had a little bit of a different insight than some of my colleagues because we had met in private and you'd gone over a plan somewhat similar to this in private. And I'll be frank with you, I expected that what you presented to me in private was what you were going to present tonight. Unfortunately, it seems like your focus has changed a little bit. When we met in private, we talked about the same priorities essentially, but we really were talking about the numbers. You put a number to the different things that you thought the city needed to implement. And we talked about what we thought things were going to cost, where the money was going to come from. If I remember correctly, you also presented a total. You were looking at $5.5 million cost to the city. None of that was presented today, and I'm not sure why. I think that it would have been appropriate to do so here, because ultimately, these are all great ideas, but at some point, we have to prioritize what we can afford versus what we would like to do. And I thought tonight you were going to present this, and we were going to have a very public discussion about what we thought was important, and with the city manager, with the budget coming up in the next couple months, what we can afford to start doing versus what needs to be put off, and more importantly, where the money was going to come from to pay for these things. So I think, unfortunately, it's a big component that's missing tonight. Regarding the city center partnership, I think the role of that is clear. We have an ordinance that defines what the role of the city center partnership is. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the ordinance, if you ever reviewed it, but it's pretty clear what their role is, and specifically that they answer to the city manager. So I'm not sure what needs to be reorganized or reprioritized. I think maybe the city center partnership and the city should have an open dialogue and work together better. I think it's pretty clear how it's supposed to work. It's set in our city code, and for the most part, I think it's worked well. But I have to, you talked about the joint economic development directive. That was an idea that I brought forward with Mr. Hawk to the city center partnership, the idea that the city would contribute to the salary of the person they wanted to hire. That was rejected by the city center partnership. I think maybe some attitudes have changed recently, and they may be open to that, but that was brought forward by myself and the city manager. And again, I'm not sure why you weren't aware of that. Maybe.
Well, I heard about it kind of offhanded. I mean, I was never asked for my opinion on it. And this is now the first opportunity I've had to really comment on it.
Well, if I can go on. You listed action agenda priorities, reorganize stakeholder responsibilities. Number 1, reconnect Chicago Street, stimulate residential development, improve homeless vagrancy problem, remove Chicago Street, or renovate Chicago Street, build a downtown square park, complete negotiations on new Will County Courthouse, extend life of downtown district, upgrade street parking. These are all things that are going to be handled by the council or by the city manager. And to be honest, again, you mentioned that the courthouse negotiations, 5 of the people who are responsible for that, 2 of the county board members, Ms. Freitag and Mr. Frissalone, Councilman Girl, myself, and Mr. Hawk were the ones that are responsible for that. Not city center partnership or a pseudo-economic development director. The negotiations to reconnect Chicago Street are happening right now. It's an ongoing negotiation. That's being done by this council, members of this council, the city manager, and the county board. And for the most part, the other action agenda priorities you list are all things that this council needs to handle. So I don't believe there needs to be 2 economic development directors in this city, 1 at the city center partnership and 1 for the city of Joliet. I do believe city center partnership plays an important role, but I think ultimately the success of a downtown plan is going to rest with this council. Our staff and our economic development committee and the council are the ones who broker deals. This council are the people who vote on deals and what incentives we're going to get. We are the ones who are going to vote on whether we're going to extend the TIF district, if we're going to rewrite the ordinance. That all happens here. So I think it's a little misguided to make that the number 1 priority. I think the roles are clear, and I think it works well. I think it's going to work really well going forward. But I think I need to be clear, and I know we talked about this in executive session. It's imperative that we get an economic development director in the city, but that person's going to work for the city because ultimately the city is the body that has the ability to make any of these things happen. So I think, again, when we talked in private, that really wasn't a focus of your report. Your report dealt more with these agenda items and what it was going to cost to get them done. If you have those numbers, I would like to turn the conversation in that direction, if we could talk about that.
So, first of all, the report has not changed since you and I had a private conversation, and, you know, the agenda, action agenda, is in the document. There is reference to order of magnitude funding for these in the document, in the action agenda. And what I have done here is to kind of try to kind of boil it all down to what, in my opinion, was the most important things to pursue. I think we may have just a difference of opinion in terms of stakeholder responsibilities and what's the most effective partnership of city center partnership and the city of Joliet to move things forward. I don't think you know, the past experience of CCP and the city have been, in terms of the partnership, have really brought forth, you know, the kind of results that, you know, you'd like. So it was my opinion that things should be improved. And whether, I mean, you may, certainly anyone may take issue on the numbering of these things or whether they're important at all. Again, this was my opinion on what needed to happen. And I realize that other things have transpired since, you know, I last made a presentation, since I last talked to city council members. So if things have changed in the intervening time, then you know, I'm a little behind in things. So with respect to the 9 initiatives, there are a number of these things that don't take a lot of money. I did not put specific dollar amounts in here because I didn't do specific cost estimates. I believe when I spoke with council members, I had some rough numbers of what I thought things would cost. For example, I think reconnecting Chicago Street, I pegged it somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000. I think I may have talked to city staff on that and, you know, gotten some either a nod or maybe it was a little bit too low, but somewhere in the ballpark, you know, for that kind of improvement. You know, if you do reorganize stakeholder responsibilities, it's a very low cost to that. Extending the life of the downtown TIF is also a very low cost. You know, maybe it's you know, a $50,000 item if you hire a consultant to do that. Stimulate residential development projects. That is a cost for expertise, so that would be staff, a staff person cost. There may be incentives as well that you need to contribute to that, and that would be on a project-by-project basis. You know, when you were talking about the Plaza Hotel kind of redevelopment, there were certain, you know, TIF incentives that you offered. So this action item would involve both the cost of staff, the cost of expertise, and whatever incentives that you offer. It would be something that is continuous, that goes on from day one through 20 years and beyond. You're never going to stop trying to stimulate development projects. Improving the homeless vacancy problem, I kind of pegged it somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000. The text amendment to your zoning ordinance would cost little or nothing, and to get a study from a qualified expert on homeless services and regulating homeless services, I think would be somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000. The new county courthouse negotiations, you know, the negotiations part of it is staff time, and then what you contribute to that is what you contribute to that. I've heard a couple different numbers. You know, that's a big ticket item. That's over many years. That's kind of a different animal than some of the rest of these. To build the downtown square or park at Chicago and Cass, There are a number of costs. There would be kind of an initial kind of programming, budgeting cost that, where you may hire a consultant, there may be a few $1,000s you spend for a consultant to kind of frame what you're going to do. You will then, when you've budgeted for this, you then go into construction drawings. Hopefully, there's no property assembly that's needed that because the land is publicly owned by the county or the city. And then you go into construction drawings and you hire somebody to do that, and then you build it, and it might be, a $1 to $2 million project, I would think. Okay. The upgrading of street parking, I think, would also be a fairly low item cost-wise, and you're talking about replacing meters with smart parking devices. They're all over the place. They're not that expensive. I haven't, done a cost estimate on it or had experience with it, but I believe it's fairly low, in the range of a couple $100,000. And then renovating Chicago Street as a urban multimodal corridor, I think, would be a fairly large cost item that would probably be in the 5-year range in terms of implementation. Again, it starts with some initial studies and programming. We kind of touched on it in our study. You then go to a real formal design, which would cost, perhaps a couple $100,000, and then there's the construction implementation of it, which might be a $5 million item. Okay, and so those are each of the 9 items in terms of a relative order of magnitude cost that I think would be kind of instructive for you to kind of keep in mind. There's a lot of kind of low-hanging fruit, things that you can do to improve the downtown that don't cost a lot of money. There are some big-ticket items, like 3 big-ticket items, that you have to budget for. And I think kind of a longer-term budget process would be useful relative to the downtown. Look 5 years out. What do we need to do this year? If we want to make this initiative happen, when do we start budgeting? Well, we need $50,000 this year. We need to look at $200,000 in the 3rd year, and whatever it is, $2 or $3 million in years 5 and 6. And so then, that kind of informs how you go through your whole budget cycle and how the budget cycle supports the downtown improvement.
I agree. Thank you. Jim, you're going to present a budget soon, in the next few weeks, I would imagine.
Yes.
Is any of this going to be addressed in the budget? I think staff has already been working towards some of the goals that are listed on here.
Yeah, we're actively working, the Public Works Department has a meeting with IDOT to discuss their requirements so that we can do Phase 1 engineering for putting Chicago Street through. Kendall, did you say CMAP? Can you fill in council regard to some technical grants?
Yes, the city has a technical assistance grant that was awarded by CMAP. They are scoping that project, and that will be the next conceptual order of business for the Chicago streetscape design. They'll incorporate the downtown, the central square, the park in that design as well. And we should get cost estimates out of that process in terms of the actual construction dollars. So we're looking for that plan to start probably over the next couple of months.
Good. Thank you. And I think that's crucial moving forward. I think as a council, we need to identify what the priorities are, and then, of course, what it's going to cost and how we pay for it.
Mayor?
Yes.
My apologies, I don't mean to interrupt the flow too, but I do have to leave for a previous engagement that I had committed prior to us having this meeting at 1:45. And one question I got, and again, I thank you for your presentation. The City Center Partnership has been here for about 19 years. I've been on the council 4 years. This is the first I've heard of this tonight when you said there are grants out there that only they would qualify for. Can you give us some exact examples?
Well, I would just say that the whole realm of foundation grants, foundations are going to give primarily to nonprofits. They're not, they're not typically going to give to municipalities. You've got your own funding sources, and so they're really, whether it would be, the MacArthur Foundation or the Mott Foundation. These are organizations that are well endowed with an endowment for giving grants, and they fund a whole range of projects. They typically need to be projects that don't overlap with what the city does. Okay, so I mean, you're not going to get probably a grant to redesign Chicago Street as a multimodal corridor, but you may get a grant to study the homeless vacancy problem.
So as a city, you could pick and choose and say, on this project, the city set a partnership, you might qualify for this grant too, we want you to kind of manage this project.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think first of all, it's having good communication with city center partnership, saying, okay, here's our long-term kind of funding, budgeting, scenario, and CCP, how can you help on this? Can you go out and look and see if you can get a grant to study this homeless problem? That's the kind of thing that I think would be, potentially very productive.
Did you identify what's different now moving forward that would have us qualify for such grants that we haven't qualified for 19 years?
Well, I'm not saying it may not be a matter of qualifying for it, but you may not have gone after it, and you may not have had the right, organization ask for the funds.
Okay.
So that is kind of what might be different going forward.
Thank you. Mayor, I'm have to excuse myself.
Thank you.
Just a quick question with respect to Chicago Street Gym. And I know that you had said you're building in some costs into the budget, and Kendall has worked on a few things as well. I'm assuming you're also, that deal still needs to be negotiated with the county as far as Chicago Street going through. I'm assuming you are going to be having conversations with the county with respect to those negotiations. And
Certainly.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor, we do have one other item that was tabled. Maybe a 5-minute recess would be appropriate for those that aren't interested.
Oh, he wants questions from the floor.
Yeah.
Yes,
There's a question from the floor that someone, I guess,
we opened up before the meeting. Do you want to?
not really.
What we did before the meeting. It's up to the council. Do you want to take questions?
Go on now.
The public comments later.
Public comments after? Okay.
We'll have
Public comments later.
after the council member.
Him? No. Yeah. No comments. Okay. 5 minutes is up.
Everybody's gone.
And none of the things he
Where's he going?
Hey, Joe.
Joe,
Glad you made the comments you made, because just, we have all the people in place you need right here in Joliet. All this stuff.
Watch the mic. Jim.
Watch the
Up.
mic. Just reiterating all the things we did.
Oh, that's what
How long is the closed session going to last, you think?
I agree.
Yes, right. That's what I'm telling you.
Isn't that an idea that can create this, they call it a critical mass. Idea that said, people downtown,
I don't know.
multi-millionaire and no kind of opportunity for him to make his bones.
Think about it. I don't care if it was small or big.
We covered it up. I'm not gonna let me part
But in front of it, the report, quite frankly, was a lot better. Well, he showed me one of mine. I don't know why he didn't present it.
Where's my drink?
I want to see some friend of his that, hey, are you
Since '87.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you.
He didn't repeat.
like Jan says, the first thing we gotta do is open. Chicago Street's the main thing.
We've known that for years. I mean, tell me something I don't know.
All our fingers, years ago it was 4-lane, parking on both sides.
I know.
And that's what he's proposing.
They opened up State Street. Remember that back in the 70s?
Yeah, but only for buses and cabs or something,
And
yeah.
then State Street was a mess.
Yeah, I mean, the shelters already give the strictest rules around.
There's nothing. It's in Chicago.
Already give the strictest rules around. And, you know, if you violate, you're out. And then you have 6 months to get back in. And what a lot of them do is during the summer months, they screw up. 6 months to get back in. Something.
They didn't change their policy.
Hey, Joseph.
The other thing is, 2 years or 4 years ago, I was downtown picking up my cousin, and we sort of about it. The state prison starts at 6 in the morning. They go around the state picking up prisoners, and they take them home at one station. At one station, only that's Union Station in downtown Joliet, not to Aurora, not to New Lenox, right here. And then we have police departments from New Lenox. Right here in Joliet.
Oh, that was John. That was John. Where you going?
Oh, I'm sorry.
They won't shut off.
No, why don't they shut off?
I don't know. None of them will.
Hey,
Let's pick up everything.
There's a lot of people here.
you know what?
That's a good turnout.
Hello. What up?
You guys in the back. I don't know if it's that fan or.
Is it the new?
fan.
Well, it's
It's
a
the fan,
fan for
too.
one thing, but he switched mics. He was talking and then he was holding
You
it.
guys.
Oh, you couldn't hear us?
What lights it? I don't know. I'm a lip reader.
It's just, you know
A
what?
long distance lip reader, too.
I can repeat it. I said, there's two of the finest gentlemen I ever met in my life sitting right in the back of the room.
You know why? When my phone would get goofy, I had to shut it off and turn it. I'm like, oh my God.
Did you see what I found?
Yes, what?
Do you?
I know.
You want to come in? Come on in. I told him we're sitting Pat's spot.
Oh, yes. We should go out for a drink.
I'm going home. You guys got things well. You guys have things well under control.
Hey, Joe. you
I'll
can stick
talk to you
around a few
tomorrow to
minutes?
find out what I
Shouldn't
missed.
be 15
Everything
minutes.
you talked about has been done.
I know.
By previous councils and this council.
Are you kidding? This is brand new.
Expert, you got all the experts you need right on this damn council.
Larry, we're gonna run after mass development. We've done all these things. This guy's a nice guy, I'm sure, but he didn't bring anything new to the plate. If he can bring something to the table, how to create that so-called critical mass on getting people downtown, he'd be a multi-millionaire overnight.
Right.
But he can't do it. Neither can we.
Hey, that's true. I want closed sessions.
Huh?
I gotta give him right home. We don't want him sitting
Okay,
down.
I'll wait. I'm not gonna. I'll go outside. Where's he gonna go?
There is?
There's no bars open.
It's people knocking.
The downtown?
Go to Chicago Bar and Grill.
Okay, can we start again?
5 minutes.
Can we start again? Can we start? Can we start again?
They're getting kind of cozy
I
there.
got clothes on.
Well, right now I'm trying to do a freelance assignment for the
Are you drawing my picture?
Nice. You're a good artist.
All right, good. We thought we'd just.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, baby. Going
I
right
get a
home.
ride home. You take my car, I get a ride home.
Yeah, Betty's here. And Terry, but we got the call.
Start walking, Joe, and I'll pick you up.
Let's go.
Here we go.
Okay, let's go.
Hold off on making money for about 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
That's right.
Told me he had plans to see some friend of his out of town,
We won't make
dying or something before
Oh,
this was set.
My dad's doing well in rehab.
Yes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Council Memo 565-15, request for authorization to approve addendum number 1 for information technology professional services.
Mayor, I ask that this was tabled at the last meeting, and there was a bit of confusion, so we've separated the two items that were on the agenda statement last time. So we're asking you just to approve the memo, which is a consolidation of all of the data that we have, so that our Tyler Munis software and our software can all work off of one database. And then following approval of that motion, Kendall Jackson's going to say a few things about the GIS system.
Is there a motion to approve the revised Council Memo 565-15?
Move to approve the revised motion. Or
Motion seconded to approve. Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Girl.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Mayor and members of the council, I just wanted to say a few brief words about our GIS system. I think at the last meeting where the memo was brought forward, there was some confusion in terms of what we were proposing. So the project that was before you, that you just approved, was the data cleaning project. That needs to happen regardless of any other investments in the GIS system. With the GIS, it is just simply a, well, I shouldn't say simply, it is a collection of all of the city's location data. We have grown that database to include crime information. The fire run areas are also included in that database. Water and sewer facilities are also there. Parcel information that we get from both Will County and Kendall County. And that's the real estate records that we get from the two counties with ownership information as well as assessment data. There's also zoning information, and most importantly for moving forward, that is where we keep the address and location information that this short-term project will essentially fix. Longer term, we do have a need for a GIS resource. We started with the GIS system years ago. We had a body on the planning division and that resource is gone. We are currently working with a consultant to shore that function up. There's also other departments that are utilizing the GIS system, and they have employees that are doing some GIS work, but there's no dedicated staff person that is handling anything with GIS, coordinating, and most importantly, not focusing on the address and location information. That is important because as we move towards the Tyler Munis implementation, we're looking at one central standard database that will contain a clean record, a clean address record. And that's important because it really ties in all of the various departments, all of the various functions, from public safety through public works and utilities, as well as what we need to do in community and economic development. It all goes back to a parcel, and that all goes back to an address and a property information number. That data has to be clean in order for the systems to work, in order for the departments to be tied in, and in order for us to do our jobs adequately. At the CTIS committee meeting back in late summer, we had the GIS Consortium, which is a collection of 31 different communities that are working together on a shared services model, where the GIS Consortium, which is essentially staffed by MGP consultants. The consortium essentially provides employees in-house to do this type of work. For the city of Joliet, what they estimated was that with our size, we would need at least 2 in-house staff persons working on GIS, dedicated staff persons. That was based on their model, based on their way of doing things. We are currently looking at other options moving forward. The GIS Consortium certainly was a turnkey type of project where they would bring in employees and we would be off and running with support and some of the types of things that we need to do. There are other options for supporting that GIS function. We're in the process of getting that information, and we'll certainly provide that through the budgeting process. I just wanted to get the council up to speed on where we are with the GIS, and that we'll be working for other solutions for our GIS issues.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a request for a brief closed session.
First, we have public comments.
Anyone who wishes to address the council? Approach the mic, please, sir.
I didn't get to give that question. My question was basically for the consultant.
Name and address, please.
Bill McCandless, 1424 Woodbridge,
Thank you.
Joliet. My question is, there was no reference at all that I heard to any river walk. 5 years ago, when the idea was conceived by a group of councilmen who are no longer present here, this idea was considered to be a real part of a city center development plan. Other cities have developed a river walk, which has been very successful. We may not be of the size or activity where such a thing can be done now. Maybe it's on the shelf. But since I didn't hear anything about it, I thought I'd ask, and he's gone, so I'm asking you. Is there anything about a riverfront in the plan?
Jim?
Yes, there's a couple of points in the report about river-oriented residential, riverfront park, and he did mention the boat launch there, and also the possibility of utilizing it for a bike path to connect the existing bike paths north of town and south of town. As far as a walkway, I don't think he mentioned that specifically in the report, but there are 3 or 4 references to utilizing the river.
I've made arrangements to get a copy of the plan, so I'll be able to look further.
Jim, are we going to make the plan available online?
I believe it is posted online, but I'll make sure it is.
Thank you. Yes.
Statesman IFB Pro, Christopher Dell, person 702 Vine Street, Joel, and 65. This isn't directed towards the council or the chief city manager. This is directed toward Kendall Jackson. I got a question. Now, for the streetscape design, do we plan to use that as a city, like one universal design for the Chicago street? Is it one universal theme, or are there different themes to one street, to the streetscape thing?
We'll be focusing on just the downtown for the streetscape project, Chris. could possibly be used in other parts of the downtown, but initially we'll just be focusing on Chicago Street.
Candace Johnson, 377 Western Avenue. I would like to, I know that his report was more of a younger generation modified for downtown, but a lot of our bars and restaurants are a little too expensive for the younger generation. No, we don't have mortgages yet, but we still have school books. We still have other items that we have to pay for. I would also like to hopefully see some children's items incorporated into the downtown. We do have a lot of younger families who would like to be able to take their children places and spend money. And I know back in the day, downtown used to be a place where people would go shopping with their children to get them things and to show off downtown. And then I also wanted to say, as a downtown business person, parking is horrible with the meters. So please work on trying to eliminate the meters. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Is there a motion to go into closed session? I was going to do that after a second, but motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition or conveyance pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned. A motion? It's a motion and seconded. Councilman Girl?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Motion carried.